In this lecture, I just want you to be very careful when you use function overloads with default parameters. And we're going to look at a simple example to really drive this home. Here we have two functions. They are valid C++ overloads, and the name is printAge, and the parameters are of int and long int. These are different types in C++, so they are valid function overloads. The problem is, if we try to call any of these functions without a parameter like we do here, which would use the default argument, the compiler is going to be confused again. It doesn't know which one you want. Is it going to be the one with int or the one with long int? And you're going to get a compiler error saying that your function call here is ambiguous. So be really careful about this. And I would advise taking out this default arguments or just taking out one of these overloads. The choice is going to be yours. Now that you know about this problem, we're going to head over to Visual Studio Code and play with this a little more. Okay, here we are in our working folder. The current project is overloads with default parameters. We're going to grab our template files pretty quick and put them in place. And we are going to open this guy in Visual Studio Code by dragging and dropping here. The folder is going to open up. We're going to open our main CPP file and close the left pane here. We don't need it anymore. And we're going to clean this guy a little bit. We are going to put in the definitions for our function. They are going to show up below the main function here. And we are going to go on top and put in our declarations. So let's say that and be super clear again. And down here what we have are definitions. You already know this, but I am going to repeat this anyway. Okay, now we have our functions in. These functions are valid overloads in C++ because the types of the parameters are different. One is going to be taking int, the other is going to be taking int. If we try to compile this program, it is going to compile just fine. Let's go down and look at this. Build finished successfully. So the build is good. But the problem is going to come if you try to call these functions like this. For example, let's say printAge and not pass in any parameter, hoping to use the default arguments in either of these functions here. And the thing is, the compiler is going to be confused because now all these two functions are valid candidates for the call here. So which one do you want? The compiler is really confused and it is going to give you a compiler error. If we look at the problems tab here in Visual Studio Code, we're going to see more than one instance of overloaded function printAge matches the argument list. The compiler is basically saying all these two guys are valid candidates for the function called here. So which one do you want me to be called? I don't know. Please fix this and make your call here much more descriptive. And you're going to get an ambiguous compiler error. Let's use GCC to show you the compiler error. And it is going to say call of overloaded function printAge here is ambiguous. So you really need to be careful if you are using function overloading like this with default parameters, because this may confuse your compiler. So what you might do here is, for example, set up two variables, say int age and say 67, why not? And now if you pass in our age here, the compiler is not going to be confused because it knows that the age here is of int type. It is going to choose this guy here. And if you run the program, you're going to print the age. Okay, let's try and build this and show you that this is going to work. Now you see the build is good. If we try and run the program, we're going to bring up a terminal that we can use to run our program. We can clear now and run Rooster. We're going to see 67 because that's the age we passed in here. But the compiler is going to call this version. You see int version. And if we change our type here to long int, we're going to choose the other version. Let's do that. We're going to build with GCC. Okay, the build is good. We can clear and run Rooster. We see long int version and the age is 67. This is how you can make your calls much more descriptive and help the compiler out. If you don't have any argument passed in this function, you're going to get this compiler error. And this is really all I wanted you to be aware of in this lecture. We are going to stop here in this lecture. In the next one, we're going to try and recap what we saw in this chapter. Go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.